Hello. In this lesson, we will review one more time the properties of real numbers. We have talked about many properties of real numbers. Let's review them one more time because they are very important. And we're going to add some more properties. We'll completely make a big list of properties of real numbers. Alright, the first property is the famous property we have been using so far, the double negative property. What is the double negative property? Negative of negative A equal to positive A. Subtracting a negative is the same as adding a positive. A negative of negative A equal to positive A, where A is a real number. Negative of negative 2.4 is positive 2.4. The second property that we again know is the absolute value property. What is the absolute value property? The absolute value of a number is the distance of that number from 0 on the number line. Now, absolute value of a number is always positive, right? Absolute value of negative 5 equal to absolute value of 5, and both equal to 5. Absolute value of a number is always positive. The third property, the product of two negative numbers is positive. Negative 2 multiplied by negative 5 is positive 10. The fourth property, the product of a negative and a positive number is negative. A negative number multiplied by a positive number is negative. A positive number multiplied by a negative number is also negative. Negative 2 multiplied by 5 is negative 10. Multiplicative property of 0. Again, we talked about it. What is the multiplicative property of 0? Any real number multiplied by 0 is 0. Or 0 multiplied by any real number is 0. For any real number A multiplied by 0 equal to 0. Negative 2 multiplied by 0 equal to 0. Sixth property, the fraction property. We dealt with fractions quite a lot. What is the fraction property? We used that in the previous lesson. For any number A and any other non-zero number B, negative A over B is the same as A over negative B is the same as negative A over B. Do you remember we talked about this? Yes, we used this property, and I told you when you want to add a negative fraction, write the fraction with its numerator as negative. In other words, negative of A over B can be written as negative A over positive B, or positive A over negative B. That is the fraction property. Negative 3 over 2 is the same as 3 over negative 2, which is the same as negative 3 over 2. Alright? Now let's look at more of the properties of real numbers. Property number 7 is commutative property of addition. Commutative property of addition. What does commute means? To commute means to go back and forth. Yeah, you say you commute to work. What does that mean? You go to work and come back home. That is the meaning of commuting to work. What is the commutative property of addition? Well, what it means is A added to B is the same as B added to A. You see that? Commute. Go from A to B, on B to A. A added to B is the same as B added to A. Isn't it so? 3 added to 2 is the same as 2 added to 3. So the process of addition we say is commutative. Now, in other words, you can add forward or backward to give you the same result. 4 plus 3 equal to 3 plus 4. What is the property we have used in writing like this? The property is called commutative property of addition. I want you to watch this carefully and try and understand. Again, an area where many students have problems. In that case, what is commutative property of multiplication? Is multiplication also commutative? 3 multiplied by 2, is it the same as 2 multiplied by 3? Yes. So commutative property is equally applicable to multiplication. In other words, A multiplied by B is the same as B multiplied by A. 2 multiplied by -3 is the same as -3 multiplied by 2. The property is commutative property of multiplication. Alright, another property of real numbers is called associative property of addition. Associative, what does association means? Well, let me explain that using an example. A plus B, now here I have an association. A added to B, they are grouped together. And then the result is added to C. You see, watch again. You first add A and B, A plus B, and then the result is added to C. Well, it is the same as adding A to the sum of B and C. In other words, it really doesn't matter the groupings. You can add B to C, then add the result to A. You get the same result as adding A to B and then adding the result to C. Or you can add A to C, A plus C, and then add the result to B. You get the same result. Now look at that. The order of association is not important. A plus B added to C is the same as A added to B plus C is the same as B added to A plus C. Isn't that right? Yes, I think so. Look at this. 2 plus 3 added to 5 is the same as 2 added to 3 plus 5. So it doesn't matter, you first associated or grouped 2 and 3 and then the result you added to 5. That's what we did first. Now, in the second case, we added 3 to 5 and the result is added to 2. You get the same result. It makes no difference. Associative property of addition. The same property applies to multiplication. Associative property of multiplication. What is that? The same property. A multiplied by the product of B and C. So you can see B and C are grouped together there. The association. A times BC is the same as B times AC is the same as AB times C. So if you want to multiply three numbers, it doesn't matter which two numbers you multiply first, is there? Well, let me see if I can show an example to you. For example, I want to multiply 3 times 4 times 5. Alright, I want to multiply these three numbers 3 times 4 times 5. Alright, we can multiply 4 times 5 first. What is 4 times 5? It's 20. And now you can multiply that 20 by 3. That will give me 60. Alright, you can multiply 3 and 4 first. 3 times 4 is 12. And then multiply that by 5. You get 60 again. Also, look at this. I can multiply 3 and 5 first. 3 times 5. What is 3 times 5? 15. And that result can now be multiplied by 4. 15 times 4 is 60. So all these are the same. In other words, 3 times 4 times 5 can be written as 3 times 4 multiplied by 5 is the same as 3 times 5 multiplied by 4 is the same as 3 multiplied by 4 times 5. So any different association, different groupings really does not change the result. That is associative property of multiplication. So commutative property and associative property can be applied to both addition and subtraction. Okay, we have now talked about 10 properties of real numbers. I want you to review these so that you are very familiar with it. Okay, number 11, additive identity. What is the meaning of identity? You see, although we add something to a number, the identity of that number is not changed. Can you tell me, what can we add to a number so that the identity of the number is not changed? Well, the only number you can add to another number so that its identity is not changed is 0. Adding 0 to a number A does not change its identity. You see, you add 0 to any number, will it change the number? No. 4 added to 0 remains 4. Its identity is not changed. So adding 0 to a number does not change its identity. A added to 0 remains A. 2 added to 0 remains 2. Therefore, 0, you can actually give a name to 0 using this. What name can you give? 0 is called the additive identity of any real number. Adding 0 to a real number does not change the identity of that real number. 0 is the additive identity of any real number. Alright, number 12 is multiplicative identity. Alright, you should be able to tell me that. Now, what number can I multiply a real number with, so that the identity of the real number will not change? Well, you know that any number multiplied by 1 will remain the same. 4 multiplied by 1 equal to 4. Multiplying a real number by 1 does not change the identity of that number. Multiplying a number A by 1 does not change its identity. A multiplied by 1 equal to A. 5 multiplied by 1 equal to 5. So what can you call this 1? 1 can be called the multiplicative identity of any real number. 1 is the multiplicative identity of any real number. Okay, the next property is called the additive inverse. Additive inverse. Well, you know that for every number on the right side of the number line, there is an opposite number on the left side. Tell me, what do you get if you add a number to its opposite? 5 added to negative 5 will give you 0. You see, A added to negative A produces 0. Therefore, you can see A added to negative A equal to 0. 2 added to negative 2 equal to 0. Therefore, negative A is the additive inverse of A. What is the additive inverse of 10? The additive inverse of 10 is negative 10. Alright, what is the additive inverse of negative 5? The additive inverse of negative 5 is positive 5. You see, the additive inverse of a number is its opposite, the inverse. So negative 2 is the additive inverse of positive 2. Or I can say the other way around, positive 2 is the additive inverse of negative 2. Okay, in that case, what is multiplicative inverse? Well, multiplicative inverse is a number. What number will you multiply a real number with to produce 1? You see, don't confuse between additive inverse and multiplicative inverse. In additive inverse, you add a number to its inverse to produce 0. In multiplicative inverse, you multiply a number with its inverse to produce 1. In other words, the multiplicative inverse is actually the reciprocal of the number. A multiplied by 1 over A equal to 1. Is that right? Isn't 1 over A the reciprocal of A? Any number multiplied by its reciprocal is 1. And so multiplicative inverse is actually the reciprocal of a real number. 1 over A is the multiplicative inverse of A, which you also know as the reciprocal of A. So multiplicative inverse of a real number is its reciprocal. The next property we will discuss is called the distributive property. What is distributive property? Well, C multiplied by A minus B. We are going to use this property very often. So you must really understand what the property means. You see, you have a quantity inside the parenthesis and a number outside it. What that means is this number outside, here in this case it is C. This C is to be multiplied with each of the numbers inside. In other words, C times A minus B means C multiplied by A, that is CA, and C multiplied by negative B. What is C multiplied by negative B? Minus CB. Look at this. C multiplied by A is CA, and C multiplied by negative B is minus CB. C times A minus B is CA minus CB. This is called the distributive property. What we are doing here is distributing that quantity. Okay, in that case, I want you to now look at some of the results I'm going to give you and identify the property that is used here. What is the property that is used here? 5 times V plus W equal to 5V plus 5W. What is the property used here? Very simple, is that right? What we did is we distributed 5. This 5 is distributed to the numbers inside. 5 times V plus W is 5 times V plus 5 times W. And therefore, we have used the distributive property here. Alright, name the property used in C multiplied by D equal to D multiplied by C. What has happened here? Multiplying C by D is the same as multiplying D by C. What's the property there? What's the process? Commutative. In other words, this is the commutative property of multiplication. Is that right? Commutative property of multiplication. You can multiply C with D or D with C, you get the same result. How about this? X plus 0 equal to X. What is the property that we have used there? Well, we have added a real number to X, but the identity of X has not changed. So this is the additive identity property. X plus 0 equal to X. The identity of X has not changed, although we added a real number to it. X plus 0 equal to X. 0 is the additive identity of any real number. Alright, let's look at another result. Look at this. 2x times 3y multiplied by 4y is the same as 2x times 3y times 4y. Now what is the difference between the left and the right? On the left side, you first multiplied 2x by 3y. That is the association. You associated or grouped 2x and 3y. You multiplied that first and then multiplied the result with 4y. On the right side, we multiplied 2x with what? With the product of 3y and 4y. Our association has changed. That means this result is the same. The property used there is the associative property of multiplication. You see, the association has changed. In the first, we used 2x multiplied by 3y in a group. In the second, we have 3y multiplied by 4y as a group. The association has changed, but the result hasn't changed. The associative property of multiplication. Another one. Name the property used in 4 times 1/4 equal to 1. Well, a number multiplied by its reciprocal equal to 1. And this is called the multiplicative inverse. Reciprocal of a real number is also called its multiplicative inverse. So this is the inverse property of multiplication. Try this. Name the property used in x plus negative x equal to 0. Alright? A number added to its opposite equal to 0. And we gave a name for that opposite. A number added to its inverse give you 0. No? Is that right? Yes. So this property is the additive inverse. Additive inverse. A number added to its opposite equal to 0. Additive inverse. Look at this one. Name the property used in. I want you to look at it carefully. Negative 4 times 2 times 6 equal to negative 4 times 2 multiplied by 6. Okay, I want you to give me the answer. What's the property used here? Obviously, we have multiplied 3 numbers. You see, on the left we have 3 numbers multiplied. On the right we have 3 numbers multiplied. What is the difference? The difference is the association or the groupings have changed. On the left we group 2 and 6, multiply that together. On the right we grouped negative 4 and 2, multiply that and then multiplied by 6. In other words, the association has changed in that multiplication. What is the property we use there? Associative property of multiplication. How about this? 3 times 5t minus 3 times 7r equal to 3 times in parentheses 5t minus 7r. If you notice this, if you distribute the right side, you know how now to distribute, is that right? To distribute means multiply this 3 with each of the numbers inside the parenthesis. Look at this. 3 multiplied by 5t is this. And 3 multiplied by negative 7r is minus 3 times 7r. So what have we used here? This is the distributive property is what is used here. Okay, another one. Name the properties. Looks like there are more than one property. Is that right? Name the properties used. Name the properties you will use to simplify this quantity. There are 2 properties in there. Alright? What property will you use to simplify t plus negative t? What is the value of t plus negative t? Anybody? Well, t plus negative t is 0. What is the property we use there? Additive inverse. Alright, plus, what is 1/2 of 2? 1/2 multiplied by 2. What is the value of that? A number multiplied by its reciprocal is 1. So what is the property we have used here? It's the multiplicative inverse. We have used 2 properties. The first property is the additive inverse. The second property is the multiplicative inverse. That's right. T plus negative t equal to 0. That is the additive inverse. And 1/2 multiplied by 2 equal to 1. That is the multiplicative inverse. So using the two properties, what do you have? This is 0 and this is 1. So the value of this quantity will be 0 plus 1, and that is equal to 1. Okay, use the commutative and associative properties to simplify. Look at this. That's a very nice problem to understand the meaning of associative property. 1846 plus 1293 plus negative 46 plus negative 93. Now this actually can be done in a very simple way if you rearrange and rewrite it in a slightly different way. Now look at the way I'm going to write it. I'm going to write 1846 as 1800 plus 46. Is that right? 1846 is 1800 plus 46. Similarly, 1293 is 1200 plus 93. Now, plus negative 46 plus negative 93. Now, what made me do that? Because I know 46 added to its inverse will be 0. So I have the inverse of 46. That's my incentive. Similarly, 93 added to negative 93 will be 0. So what is the property we are now going to use to rearrange it? We are going to use the associative property of addition. In other words, we can now combine 1800 and 1200 together. You can associate those two together. Look at this. 1800 plus 1200. Well, let me put a parenthesis there just to show that we're going to associate that first. And then we're going to associate these two. And then we're going to associate those two. You see? We're going to do this first. And look at the way we're going to associate. You can rewrite and rearrange numbers to change the association to make it easy for us to do our calculation. Now tell me, is it easy to add these two numbers? What is 1800 plus 1200? It's very simple. That will be 3000. Is that right? Yes. And what is 46 added to negative 46? Will be 0. What is 93 added to negative 93? Is 0. So what's our result? You can see how easily we can get the result by simply rearranging the numbers, and the property we are using is the associative property of addition. We can rearrange the numbers so that the convenient ones can be added together. In other words, the order in which you associate them really doesn't matter in the final result. Okay? Alright, let's move on. So that will be 1800 plus 1200 plus 0 plus 0, and that is 3000. A very good way to use that property. Simplify the expression 4/5 multiplied by negative 0.58 multiplied by 5/4. Now what will you do to simplify that? This is actually a very simple problem. provided you do a simple rearrangement, do a little change in the association. Now, how do you change the association? Look at this, 4 over 5 and 5 over 4. 5 over 4 is the multiplicative inverse of 4 over 5. So, rather than multiplying these two numbers first, let's associate these two together, the first and the last. That will be easy to multiply, is that right? Yes. Use associative property to rewrite this as how? It will be 4/5 times 5 over 4. You can see I changed the association to make it convenient for me. 4/5 multiplied by its multiplicative inverse 5 over 4. What is the value of this? What is 4/5 multiplied by 5 over 4? It is 1. You see 5 and 5 goes, 4 and 4 goes. This is 1. So it is now 1 multiplied by negative 0.58, and that will be negative 0.58. So when you looked at it first, you thought that was very difficult. Now, when you rearranged it using the associative property of multiplication, it became very simple. You see, all these properties are very useful to us. Let's do another one. Use the distributive property to rewrite the expression negative 11 times x plus 4. Now, how will that be rewritten? It is going to be rewritten by distributing this negative 11 to each of the terms inside. It means you multiply negative 11 by x. What is negative 11 multiplied by x? It will be negative 11x. And then you multiply negative 11 with this positive 4. You see, always you look for the sign of a number. The sign of a number is the sign that appears before it. This 4 is positive. Multiply negative 11 with positive 4. What is negative 11 multiplied by positive 4? It will be negative 44. So distribute negative 11 to each of the terms inside. That will be negative 11 times x is negative 11x. And negative 11, you get that, minus 11 times positive 4. So minus 11 times x minus 11 times 4, and that will be negative 11x minus 44. Another one. Use the distributive property to rewrite the expression 13 times 5w plus 13 times 4p. Now, you notice here that each of this is multiplied by 13. 5w is multiplied by 13. 4p is multiplied by 13. So what we can do is, you can pull this 13 out and keep it outside a parenthesis. And what will then stay inside the parenthesis? It will be 5w plus 4p. And the 13 will stay outside. Alright, so here 13 is distributed and can be taken outside a parenthesis. Now look at this. 13 times 5w plus 13 times 4p can now be written as 13 outside the parenthesis, 5w plus 4p. Is that right? If you want to go back, it will be 13 times 5w, this, plus 13 times 4p. Alright, use the distributive property to rewrite this expression. 9p plus 18. You see, in the previous one we were able to take this 13 out because both these terms, do you understand when I say a term? This expression has two terms. Each term had 13 in it, and therefore we could take it out. Now, is it possible to write 9p plus 18 so that there will be one number that will appear in both of these terms? Look at the way I'm going to write it. 9p plus 18 can be written as 9 times p plus 9 times 2. In writing like that, I created a number that appears in both terms, and now that can be taken out. So we now take out this 9 and keep it outside a parenthesis. It will now become 9 times p plus 9 times 2 equal to 9 outside the parenthesis, and inside what you have, p plus 2. If you want to go back, it will be 9 times p plus 9 times 2. Now, you must start now practicing the property of distribution, because we are going to do a lot of those as we go on. Now, in this Unit 1, we are laying the foundation for doing algebra. So, this Unit 1, to understand the basics, is very, very important. Use the distributive property to rewrite the expression without parentheses. Look at this. You have simply a negative sign sitting outside the parenthesis, and you need to distribute that negative sign. Now, you understand that when a negative sign sits alone, it actually means a negative 1. So, you distribute this negative 1 means you multiply this negative 1 with every term inside. Let's do that mentally in the beginning. So, first it will be negative 1 multiplied by 2x. What is negative 1 multiplied by 2x? That will be negative 2x. And I told you, you must watch the sign of a term. The sign of 5y is negative. The sign of a term is the sign that comes immediately before it. So watch that. This 5y is negative. So you are now going to multiply the negative 1 with this negative 5y. What do you get if you multiply negative 1 with negative 5y? A negative number multiplied by a negative number will give you a positive number. So negative 1 multiplied by negative 5y will be a positive 5y. And then you got to multiply this negative 1 with this positive 6z. What is negative 1 multiplied by positive 6z? A negative multiplied by a positive will make it negative. Alright, let's do that. So far we were doing it mentally. The negative sign outside the parenthesis stands for a negative 1. So we need to distribute that negative 1 to each of the terms inside the parentheses. That's the meaning. So watch this. This is negative 1 times 2x minus 5y plus 6c. And look at the sign of each of these. This 2x is positive, 5y is negative, and 6z is positive. We are now going to multiply each of these with negative 1. So that will be negative 1 times 2x, there you are, minus 1 times negative 5y, see that? Negative 1 times negative 5y, minus 1 times 6z. We multiply each of the terms with that negative 1. And now, what is negative 1 multiplied by 2x? That is negative 2x. And negative 1 multiplied by negative 5y, treat this, negative 1 multiplied by negative 5y is positive 5y. And negative 1 multiplied by 6z is negative 6z. And that is the result. And you must be able to do this. Alright? So we actually went through a comprehensive review of properties of real numbers. We are going to use it as we move on. And I'm going to stop this lesson here. And we have one more lesson left in Unit 1, for which I will see you a little later. Okay. 4 times 3.